Part 2, The Admiral Who Knew His Enemy. Isoroku Yamamoto was not a typical naval officer. He was a man forged in two worlds, one shaped by centuries of Japanese tradition, the other by the restless dynamism of the West. He had lived in the United States. He had studied at Harvard, walked the streets of Boston, and spent years observing the heartbeat of American industry. He had seen assembly lines stretching farther than the eye could follow, shipyards crowded with hulls under construction, and workers who never seemed to rest. From those years abroad, Yamamoto carried with him a truth that few of his countrymen understood, and fewer still wanted to hear. If given time, the Americans would build a fleet larger than all the navies of the world combined. It was not a prediction born of admiration, but of respect and dread. In his personal diaries, his chief of staff, Vice Admiral Matomagaki, recorded Yamamoto's concerns in simple, haunting words. The admiral insists that victory in battle is not enough. Japan lacks the political foresight to sustain a long war. He believes we cannot win against the industrial strength of the West if the conflict drags on. But in Tokyo, few shared his restraint. The leaders of the Imperial Army spoke in the language of glory and destiny. They dreamed of expansion across Asia, of banners raised over India and Australia, of an empire stretching from Manchuria to the Indian Ocean. They dismissed Yamamoto's warnings as caution bordering on cowardice. He was, after all, a sailor, and sailors, they thought, knew little of the divine will of the emperor. Yamamoto, however, remained silent. He had served Japan all his life. He had fought in the Russo-Japanese War, seen comrades die in flames at Tsushima, and understood better than anyone the cruelty of overconfidence. He knew that Japan's triumphs in China, its victories across the Pacific, were built upon fragile foundations, limited resources, stretched supply lines, and an economy already straining under the weight of war. 3 months before the attack on Pearl Harbor, he confided in a fellow officer over tea, a conversation later recalled with reverence and sorrow. "For the first 6 months of war," he said calmly, "I will run wild, achieving victory after victory. But if the war continues beyond that, I can guarantee nothing." At the time, his words were dismissed as modesty, or perhaps pessimism. But they would soon prove prophetic. Yamamoto understood the nature of America in a way that few Japanese leaders could. He knew their spirit, the stubbornness that lay beneath their optimism. He knew that the same nation capable of jazz, baseball, and skyscrapers could, when angered, turn its entire society into a war machine. He also knew something even more dangerous, that once the United States began to fight, it would not stop until the war was finished, completely. And so, while others in Tokyo celebrated their empire's expansion, Yamamoto sat alone in his quarters aboard the flagship Nagato, staring out over the dark waters of Hashirajima anchorage. He did not see victory. He saw the horizon, vast, silent, and full of storms. "The first 6 months," he whispered to himself. "After that, we face the unknown." History would remember those 6 months, from December 1941 to June 1942, as Japan's season of triumph. Pearl Harbor, the fall of the Philippines, the sinking of the Prince of Wales and Repulse, the conquests in the Dutch East Indies. But when the 7th month came, and the tide of fortune shifted at a small atoll called Midway, Yamamoto's prophecy would come true, word for word.
Part 3, Shadows of Triumph. January 1942. The Empire of Japan stands at the height of its power. From the coast of China to the jungles of Burma, from the coral reefs of the Philippines to the harbors of Singapore, the rising sun flies unchallenged across the Pacific. In the wake of Pearl Harbor, the once mighty U.S. Pacific Fleet lies crippled. Battleships, the proud symbols of American naval power, rest at the bottom of the harbor, twisted and broken, The British fortress of Singapore, the Gibraltar of the East, has fallen. In the Dutch East Indies, oil and rubber now flow into Japanese hands. Everywhere, the imperial war machine advances, unstoppable, precise, and merciless. Tokyo celebrates. Newspapers declare the dawn of a 1,000-year empire. The public believe victory is inevitable, that divine destiny itself guides the emperor's armies. Even in Berlin and Rome, Japan's Axis partners watch with admiration and awe. But beneath the surface of triumph, shadows begin to form. For while the world marvels at Japan's victories, a quiet truth haunts the upper echelons of combined fleet. The American aircraft carriers, the very ships absent during the attack on Pearl Harbor, are still at large. Few in number, yes, but fast, elusive, and deadly to most of Japan's military leadership. These carriers are merely a nuisance, ghosts scattered across the Pacific. But to Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, they are something far greater. He knows that within those steel decks lies the true heart of American naval power. While the battleship commands glory, it is the carrier that commands the future. And as long as those ships live, Japan's victories are not complete. From his command aboard Nagato, Yamamoto studies the Pacific charts late into the night. Each red line on the map, each arrow stretching outward from Japan, marks not just conquest, but risk. Every new island captured extends their supply lines thinner. Every advance deepens the peril. He understands that Japan has won much, perhaps too much, too quickly, and he knows that America, wounded but unbroken, is already rebuilding. Shipyards on the West Coast roar with life. Factories in Detroit, Seattle, and San Diego work day and night. New planes roll off the assembly lines. New pilots take to the skies. The sleeping giant is stirring. If we are to win, Yamamoto tells the staff, his voice calm but unyielding, we must destroy their carriers. Only then will they come to the table. Only then can we dictate the terms of peace. He envisions a decisive battle, one single, crushing engagement that will shatter the American fleet and force Washington to negotiate. It would be the modern reincarnation of Japan's legendary triumph at Tsushima, the victory that had once humbled Russia and secured Japan's place among the great powers. But to achieve such a victory, Yamamoto would have to draw the Americans out. He would have to lure them into the open sea, into a trap so perfect, so irresistible, that they would have no choice but to fight. He begins to plan. In secrecy, he drafts the outline of an operation that will strike directly at the heart of American morale, an attack designed to provoke a response, an audacious move that will reach all the way to the American homeland itself.
Part 4, The Blow to Tokyo. April 18, 1942. Over the gray waters of the North Pacific, a cold wind sweeps across the flight deck of the aircraft carrier USS Hornet. The sea is rough, the morning air sharp with salt and fuel. On deck, 16 olive drab bombers stand ready, impossible machines for a mission that should have been impossible. They are Army bombers, not Navy planes. The twin-engine B-25 Mitchells were never designed to take off from a carrier deck. Yet here they are, engines roaring, crews checking their maps one last time. Their commander, Lieutenant Colonel James H. Doolittle, gives the signal. One by one, the bombers race toward the bow, wheels bouncing on the pitching deck. The first aircraft barely clears the waves, its landing gear brushing the spray. Behind it, the others follow, 16 silver shapes vanishing into the clouds, heading west, toward Japan. Their mission is simple, almost symbolic: strike the heart of the empire. Show the world that America still fights. Hours later, the people of Tokyo look up in disbelief. Sirens wail. In the sky, small dark shapes glide through the haze. Bombs fall, a few on factories, a few on warehouses, and some on the outskirts of the imperial palace itself. The physical damage is small, but the psychological shock, immense. For the first time in its history, the sacred capital of Japan has been attacked. Firefighters scramble through burning streets. Civilians watch the smoke rise over Tokyo Bay. The newspapers call it a minor raid, but the illusion of invulnerability, the belief that Japan was beyond reach, is shattered. In government offices and military headquarters, anger replaces disbelief. How could the Americans reach our homeland? Generals demand. The army wants revenge. The Navy promises to deliver it. Admiral Yamamoto listens in silence. He knows what this moment means. The Americans have shown their resolve, not with numbers, but with audacity. They are not beaten. They are awakening. He studies the map of the Pacific, his fingers tracing the long defensive arc Japan has built, from the Aleutians in the north to the Solomons in the south, across the vast Central Ocean. That perimeter, once secure, now feels too small. They will come again, he tells his staff quietly. And next time, they will not come with 16 planes. They will come with fleets. To prevent that, Japan must strike first, and strike deep. The Doolittle Raid convinces Yamamoto that Japan's defensive ring must be expanded. If America can reach Tokyo, then Japan must push its front lines farther east, to the very heart of the Pacific. He proposes a daring plan: seize Midway Atoll, a tiny island halfway between Hawaii and Japan. From there, Japan can threaten Pearl Harbor itself and lure what remains of the U.S. Navy into a final, decisive battle. It is exactly the confrontation Yamamoto has sought, the test of steel, and that will decide the fate of the Pacific. He believes it will end the war.
Part 5, Midway, The Defeat of Arrogance. June 1942. The Pacific is calm, deceptively calm. Across the endless blue, the Imperial Japanese Navy sails toward destiny. Four carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, form the core of Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's Kido Butai, the most powerful striking force ever assembled upon the sea. Their mission is absolute: to crush the remaining American carriers, seize Midway Atoll, and force the United States into submission. Yamamoto's staff called Operation MI, the masterstroke that will finish what Pearl Harbor began. But unknown to them, the Americans already know everything. In a cramped room beneath Pearl Harbor, far from the roar of the ocean, U.S. Navy cryptanalysts have broken Japan's naval code. The team at Station HYPO, led by Commander Joseph Rockefort, has pieced together fragments of messages, ciphers, and clues. Through quiet brilliance and a daring deception, they confirm that AF, the coded target, means Midway. Admiral Chester W. Nimitz now holds the advantage Yamamoto believes is his. As the Japanese fleet advances, confident and unaware, 3 American carriers, Enterprise, Hornet, and a hastily repaired Yorktown, wait silently to the east of Midway, hidden beneath a veil of radio silence. The trap is set. June 4th, 1942. Just after dawn, Japanese aircraft launched their first strike on Midway Island. Bombs fall on the airfield. Black smoke rises from fuel tanks, and the defenders fight back with every gun they have. From the bridge of Akagi, Vice Admiral Chuchi Nagumo watches the attack unfold. The raid succeeds, but not completely. Midway still fights. Nagumo hesitates. Should he launch a second strike, or prepare his planes for an American counterattack? It is a moment measured in minutes, yet it decides the fate of empires. At 10:22 a.m., the sky above the Japanese fleet erupts. American dive bombers from Enterprise and Yorktown appear from the clouds, diving almost vertically, their engines screaming. Within 5 minutes, the ocean is ablaze. Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu, the pride of Japan, are burning wrecks. Their flight decks twist and buckle under columns of flame. Ammunition detonates. Pilots and deck crews leap into the sea. Each ship, a symbol of Japan's naval supremacy, now dies in a storm of fire. Only Hiryu remains. Her captain, determined to avenge his comrades, launches 2 counterstrikes that find Yorktown. leaving her crippled and burning. But vengeance is brief. By afternoon, Hiryu 2 is found and destroyed. By sunset, for Japanese carriers, the same that had devastated Pearl Harbor, lie beneath the waves. Over 250 aircraft are lost. The elite aviators of the Kido Butai, men trained since before the war, vanish with them.
Part 6, The War of Attrition. The tide has turned. After Midway, Japan's expansion halts, but it does not collapse. The war in the Pacific shifts from lightning conquest to a brutal, grinding struggle of endurance. August 1942. The first U.S. Marines land on Guadalcanal, a humid, disease-ridden island deep in the Solomon Chain. What begins as a small foothold will ignite a campaign that devours men, ships, and hope alike. The Japanese are determined to take the island back. Night after night, their destroyers, the infamous Tokyo Express, race down narrow channels under the cover of darkness, landing troops and supplies before dawn. The Americans fight to stop them, and so begins the long and terrible battle for the Solomons. A series of clashes fought in darkness, rain, and fire. It is in these waters that a new name begins to echo among the fleet, a name that will soon become legend, USS Helena, CL-50. Sleek, fast, and deadly, Helena is a light cruiser of the Brooklyn class, but her crew calls her something else. The machine gun cruiser. Her 6-inch guns can fire faster than any ship afloat, 15 rounds per minute from each barrel. When she opens fire, her salvos merge into a continuous roar, a drumbeat of steel. Japanese observers, stunned by the ferocity of her barrages, report that she must have twice as many turrets as she actually carries. But Helena's power is not only in her guns. She carries one of the Navy's newest and most secret weapons, radar. Her operators can track enemy ships in total darkness, turning night, once Japan's greatest ally, into American territory. The Solomons become a place of perpetual twilight. Battles fought at point-blank range, ships firing blindly through rain and smoke. Searchlights cut through the darkness, shells scream across the water, explosions roll over the jungle hills like thunder. At night, the ocean glows with burning oil and tracer fire. At dawn, only wreckage remains, and the dead drift with the tide. In this crucible of chaos, Helena becomes the spearhead of the American advance. She fights at Cape Esperance, where her radar-guided gunnery helps surprise and annihilate a Japanese cruiser force. She duels off Guadalcanal, firing so fast her guns glow red-hot. Her crew, sailors barely out of their teens, learn to fight, reload, and repair under constant fire. Every battle leaves scars. The ship's decks are pitted with shrapnel. Her hull bears the marks of near misses and the strain of endless combat. Yet Helena keeps returning to the fight. The men who serve aboard her begin to believe she is untouchable, a ship blessed by fate. But in the Solomons, luck is the only armor that never lasts.
Part 7, Operation Toenails, The Road to Kula Gulf. June 30th, 1943. The night sky above the Solomon Islands glows faintly with lightning. In the humid air, the faint rumble of naval guns rolls across the dark sea. The beginning of Operation Toenails, the Allied invasion of New Georgia. Along the beaches of Rendova, landing craft grind to the surf under the cover of American cruisers and destroyers. Among them, at the heart of the bombardment line, is the USS Helena, CL-50, her decks trembling with the rhythm of her 6-inch guns. Each broadside tears through the jungle with mechanical precision, flattening palm trees, blasting open paths 100 yards wide. Her gunners, trained to perfection after months of combat, work as one. Shells scream overhead, burst inland, and erase entire Japanese positions before they can fire back. The few coastal batteries that do answer are silenced within minutes. Helena's radar locks onto their flashes, and her counterfire finds them with surgical speed. In the flickering glare of her own gunfire, her gray hull seems almost alive, a machine built for war, speaking in thunder. July 4th, 1943, Independence Day. For the men aboard Helena, it is both symbolic and surreal. Thousands of miles from home, under a foreign sky, they celebrate America's freedom with the language of fire. That evening, Helena turns her guns toward Munda Airfield, the Japanese stronghold on New Georgia. The night explodes in chaos. The Japanese, now alert and dug in, unleash a storm of anti-aircraft fire. Black bursts of flak the heavens like dark flowers blooming in reverse. Helena's anti-aircraft crews respond instantly, their 40mm guns chattering furiously, sending streaks of red and orange through the night. For a moment, the sky above Munda becomes a living fireworks show, democracy and fascism dueling in tracer light. Each burst of gunfire draws cheers from the men at the batteries, their faces lit by the strobing flash of battle. It is Independence Day in Pacific, a celebration written not in parades but in courage. When dawn comes, Helena withdraws to Tulagi to refuel and reload. Her decks are streaked with soot, her barrels scorched from continuous firing. Beneath the clang of hatches and the hiss of fuel lines, there is something quieter, an unease that words can't name. That evening, intelligence reports arrive. Another Tokyo Express is racing down from the north, a column of Japanese destroyers bringing reinforcements and supplies to New Georgia. The order is swift: intercept and destroy. Task Force 68, under Rear Admiral Walden Ainsworth, will sail to meet them in the Gulf of Kula. At its core, as always, is Helena. As the sun sets on July 5th, the men of Helena ready for battle. They've done this before, countless times in the Solomons, but tonight feels different. Something in the air carries a weight that none of them can shake. Maybe it's the full moon, rising bright and cold above the horizon, turning the sea into molten silver. For months, darkness has been their ally, concealing them from Japanese eyes. Tonight, there is no darkness. The moonlight exposes every ship, every wake, every silhouette. Or maybe it's the rumors. Whispers that this Tokyo Express may include Japanese cruisers, not just destroyers. A heavier fight, a deadlier one. Or perhaps deep down, it's something else entirely. The quiet intuition that luck, that invisible armor which has carried Helena through every battle so far, might finally be wearing thin.
Part 8, The Last Battle of the Helena. Night of July 5th to 6th, 1943, the Gulf of Kula. The sea is calm. The moon hangs high and cold above the Solomon Islands, casting its pale light across the restless black waters. Beneath it, the USS Helena, CL-50, cuts through the waves, fast, silent, confident. Her crew moves with the precision of men who have done this a dozen times before. They know every sound, every vibration of the ship, and tonight, she feels alive. Alive, and walking into destiny. At 1:30 hours, the first faint echoes appear on the radar screen. Contacts. Bearing 080. Range, 22,000 yards. The voice of the radar operator is calm but sharp, the practiced tone of men who have faced death so often it has become routine. On the bridge, the tension tightens. Rear Admiral Walden Ainsworth, aboard the cruiser Honolulu, leads the formation, Honolulu, Helena, and St. Louis, followed by destroyers forming a lethal spearhead. Facing them in the dark waters ahead is Rear Admiral Teruo Akiyama, commanding 10 Japanese destroyers, each armed with the fearsome Type 93 Long Lance torpedo. A weapon capable of running 20,000 yards at nearly 50 knots, its power unmatched in the world. Invisible. Silent. Deadly. For the first time, the Japanese have radar parity. They see the Americans as the Americans see them. The hunters and the hunted move toward each other, unaware that within minutes, both fleets will be swallowed by chaos. 1:57 hours. Admiral Ainsworth's order crackles through the comms, open fire. Helena is the first to respond. Her guns roar to life with their familiar, mechanical fury. The sea and sky are torn apart by thunder and flame. At a rate that seems impossible, one salvo every 6 seconds, she unleashes a storm of 6-inch shells. The target, the Japanese flagship Miyazuki. Helena's radar locks on perfectly. The first salvo hits. The second salvo detonates Miyazuki's magazines, an enormous explosion rips through the night. The ship is torn apart, her torpedoes exploding in sympathetic bursts. Admiral Akiyama dies within the first minutes of battle, his bridge engulfed in blinding white fire. For a moment, Helena's crew cheers, a clean, perfect kill. But victory in the Pacific never comes without a price. Before dying, the Japanese destroyers had already launched their deadly spread, nearly 50 torpedoes slicing through the dark, unseen beneath the waves. 2 o'clock hours. Helena shifts targets, firing at other destroyers closing in fast. Her gunners, still feeding the guns, are relentless. But then, the magazine crews call up a different kind of powder. The last of the flashless propellant is gone. They load standard powder instead. With each blast, a new flash erupts from her guns, a brilliant muzzle flare, visible for miles. The darkness that once protected her is gone. She becomes a beacon, a bright, flashing silhouette against the black horizon. Every Japanese torpedo officer in the Gulf sees it instantly. At 2:03, fate arrives. 3 long lance torpedoes find her. The first slams into her bow, a violent, bone-shattering impact that blows apart her forward compartments and rips away the number 1 turret. The second strikes amidships, deep beneath the waterline, shattering fuel tanks and steam lines. The third hits aft of the engine rooms, a perfect kill shot. A roar of metal and water fills the ship. Her spine snaps. The deck buckles. Power vanishes, the lights flicker once, then go black. Helena, the machine gun cruiser, is mortally wounded. On the bridge, Captain Charles Cecil stands firm amid the chaos. He knows the truth, Helena is finished. He hesitates only for a second, then gives the order no captain ever wants to say. Abandon ship. The words echo through the passageways. Men rush to the decks, to the lifeboats, to anything that floats. Steam hisses from ruptured pipes, ammunition cooks off in the burning bow. Still, her aft turrets continue to fire, defiant to the end. Even as the ship breaks in half, her gunners fight, their faces lit by the dying glow of their own guns. The sea begins to swallow her. Her midsection, the bridge, the forward decks, collapses inward and sinks first, dragging dozens of men down with it. The stern, still buoyant, remains afloat, a shattered refuge for hundreds of survivors. They cling to twisted steel and oil-slicked planks, watching their ship disappear beneath the moonlit waves. The clock reads 2:10 a.m. The battle rages on in the distance, but for the men of Helena, it is already over. Their war has become a struggle not for victory, but for survival.
Part 9, Survivors. Dawn July 6, 1943. The Gulf of Kula lies silent at last. The thunder of guns is faded, replaced by the hiss of the sea. All that remains on the surface are fragments, twisted metal, shattered rafts, and the faint cries of men scattered across the waves. The ocean reeks of oil, smoke, and death. A black slick stretches for miles, broken only by drifting debris and lifeless bodies. Somewhere beneath that dark water lies the heart of the USS Helena, still glowing faintly with fire. As the first light of dawn cuts across the horizon, 2 American destroyers, USS Nicholas and USS Radford, turn back toward the inferno. They know the risk. Japanese aircraft could appear at any moment, but they also know their duty. Without hesitation, they push through the wreckage. Sailors line their rails, throwing ropes, nets, and ladders into the water. Men too weak to swim are hauled aboard by sheer strength of will. Others are dragged out of the oil, coughing black water, their faces ghostly pale beneath streaks of soot and salt. Hold on. Grab my hand. The cries echo across the waves, human against a vast, indifferent sea. On the decks, sailors form human chains, reaching down, pulling their brothers from the abyss one by one. By the time the rescue ships withdraw, 739 men have been saved, but hundreds more still adrift, cling to debris, to faith, to life itself. When the sun climbs higher, salvation turns once again to peril. The distant drone of engines rolls through the sky. Japanese aircraft. Admiral Ainsworth. Faced with an impossible choice, looks out at the smoldering horizon. If he stays, he risks losing the rest of his ships. If he leaves, he condemns the survivors. After a long silence, he gives the order with a heavy heart. All ships withdraw. The destroyers turn away. Their wakes fade into the distance. The men left behind watch in silence. The only sound, the soft slap of waves against the wreckage. Hope seems to sink with the last echo of their engines. Beneath the blazing tropical sun, the survivors face a new kind of enemy. The salt water burns their wounds. Their lips crack and bleed. Their tongues swell from thirst. Sharks begin to circle, drawn by the scent of blood and fuel. Men kick weakly at the fins that brush against them, whispering prayers through cracked lips. Some simply close their eyes and let go. Yet amid the horror, order begins to form. On the floating stern section of the Helena, Lieutenant Commander John L. Chalker takes command. He gathers the survivors, about 275 men, and begins to organize what's left of their world. He establishes watch rotations, rations of rainwater and biscuits salvaged from floating lockers, and keeps the men focused. Some build makeshift sails from canvas. Others keep watch for aircraft or patrol boats. At night, lightning flashes on the horizon, tropical storms that drench them in brief, blessed rain. They drink from their helmets, share drops with wounded comrades, and cling to hope like driftwood. The days blur together. The sea is both prison and graveyard. Japanese planes occasionally appear overhead, strafing the wreckage, forcing the men to dive back into the oil-black water. When the sun sets, they huddle together on the broken deck, singing softly, songs from home, hymns, anything to keep the dark at bay. But even in that living nightmare, fate has not abandoned them. On the island of Vella La Vella, a lone coast watcher, the Reverend A.W. E. Sylvester, an Anglican missionary, spots the wreckage through his binoculars. He listens to the faint rumble of distant gunfire, then turns to his radio and begins to tap out a coded message. American survivors sighted off Vella La Vella. Many wounded. Immediate assistance required. The signal leaps across the Pacific, caught by Allied stations miles away. It carries one simple truth. The men of the Helena are alive.
Part 10, Rescue and Legacy. Night of July 7th to 8th, 1943, Gulf of Kula. The ocean is still haunted by the ghosts of battle. The waves roll quietly now, but beneath their calm surface lie the bones of men and steel, the shattered remains of the USS Helena. Above them, in the moonlight, salvation returns. From the south, cutting through the mist, come the USS Nicholas and USS Jenkins, escorted by the fast transports Dent and Waters. Their decks are dark. Their engines barely whisper. Every man aboard knows that to enter these waters again is to risk everything, but they come anyway. Their mission, to bring home whoever still breathes. The operation begins under absolute silence. No lights. No radios. Only whispered commands and the creak of ropes over water. Spotters scan the sea with binoculars. Then, faint shapes emerge from the shadows, survivors, waving weakly, clinging to bits of wood. A hush falls across the decks, broken only by the quiet voice of an officer. There they are. Let's bring them home. Boats are lowered. Hands reach out into the darkness. One by one, the men of the Helena are pulled from the black water, faces hollow, eyes sunken, bodies trembling. Some weep silently. Others just stare, dazed and broken, at the ships that have come back for them. On deck, medics rush forward with blankets, morphine, and hot coffee. No one speaks. The silence itself becomes sacred. By the end of the night, 165 more men are safe. As dawn approaches, the sea begins to stir again. In the pale light of morning, the rescuers look back one last time. The shattered stern of the Helena, which had carried so many to safety, finally begins to sink. It goes slowly, almost gently, as if waiting to ensure every survivor is clear before it slips beneath the waves. Steel groans. Air bubbles rise. Then the stern of Helena disappears forever, swallowed by the same sea that had carried her into battle so many times before. The men watch in silence. Some salute. Others bow their heads. The ship that had refused to die until her duty was done is finally at rest. But not all her men are gone. Far to the west, 88 survivors, carried by the current, wash ashore on Vela La Vela, a Japanese-held island deep behind enemy lines. Wounded, exhausted, and without supplies, they crawl into the jungle. For a week, they hide among the dense palms and mangroves, guided and protected by the island's native inhabitants. They are joined by allied coast watchers, men who risk their own lives to relay intelligence from the shadows. Together, they build shelters, signal aircraft with mirrors, and ration what little food they can find. The jungle becomes both their enemy and their salvation, filled with insects, humidity, and the ever-present sound of Japanese patrols nearby. Despite everything, they endure. July 16, 1943. After days of tense silence, the distant hum of engines echoes over the coast. For American destroyers, USS Taylor, USS Maury, USS Gridley, and USS Ralph Talbot, race toward the island in daylight, defying every convention of naval warfare. The rescue must happen now, or not at all. As they approach, Japanese artillery opens fire from the shoreline. Shells crash into the sea, sending up columns of spray. The destroyers do not turn away. They press in close, guns blazing, providing cover while small boats dart toward the beach. From the jungle, the survivors emerge, gaunt, barefoot, but alive. They wave makeshift flags, their faces streaked with sweat and dirt. The rescuers haul them aboard under fire, shielding them with their own bodies. Within minutes, the ships turn back toward open water, chased by smoke and thunder. Against all odds, every last man is saved. When the final count is taken, the numbers tell a story of both tragedy and triumph. Of the 868 men who served aboard the USS Helena, 700 survive. 168 never return, lost in the battle, the sinking, or the days of torment that followed. But the Helena's legacy is more than statistics. It is courage, the kind born in darkness, in fire, in the face of impossible odds. It is the bond between men who refuse to leave one another behind. And it is a reminder that even in death, a ship's spirit can live on, carried in the hearts of those who fought upon her decks. As the Pacific sun sets over the Solomons, the waves close over the place where Helena fell. There are no monuments, no graves, only the endless sea. But for those who knew her, those who survived her, that sea will forever whisper her name. Helena, the ship that would not die.
Part 11. The Legend of the Machine Gun Cruiser. The story of the USS Helena could have ended that night in the Gulf of Kula, another name in a long, tragic list of ships lost in the Pacific War. But legends don't die so easily. Long after the guns fell silent, sailors still spoke of her, in officers' clubs and dockside taverns, on quiet bases where the sound of the sea carried through the night. They remembered the cruiser that fired faster than any ship had a right to, the machine gun cruiser, the ship that could turn darkness into daylight with her 6-inch guns. Her legend spread not from propaganda, but from the mouths of those who had seen her fight. They told stories of her radar crews who could see through the night, of her gunners who never missed, and of the spirit that seemed to live inside her steel hull. A spirit that refused to yield, no matter the odds. The United States Navy recognized what the Helena had achieved. She was awarded 7 battle stars, and, for the first time in history, the Navy Unit Commendation granted to a ship for extraordinary heroism. Her name was inscribed beside the great victories of the Pacific. Cape Esperance, Guadalcanal, Kula Gulf, battles where her guns had changed the course of the war. To her crew, these honors were not decorations. They were memorials to those who had not come home. But the Helena's influence did not end with medals. Her sacrifice reshaped naval warfare itself. The Navy rewrote its manuals based on her example. Radar-directed night fighting became standard doctrine. Flashless powder, once considered optional, became essential, and damage control, learned through the agony of her loss, was revolutionized to prevent future ships from sharing her fate. Every ship that sailed afterward carried a piece of Helena's legacy within its hull, lessons bought with her blood. As the years passed, the men who had served aboard her grew older. Each summer, they gathered for reunions, gray-haired now, their uniforms replaced by jackets adorned with ribbons and pins. They met in community halls and naval museums, sharing coffee, laughter, and the quiet kind of grief that never fades. They spoke of the Helena as if she were still alive, as if, somewhere out there in the deep Pacific, she was still standing watch. They remembered the vibration of her engines, the rhythmic thunder of her guns, the way the deck would tremble under their boots when she opened fire. And when the conversations grew quiet, they remembered the faces of those who didn't return, the friends who still slept beneath the sea. Then, in April 2018, 75 years after her final battle, the Helena was found. The research vessel RV Petrel, led by the late Paul Allen, discovered her resting place, nearly 2,800 feet beneath the waters of the Gulf of Kula. Remote cameras descended into the darkness, their lights piercing the abyss. And there she was, her hull number 50, still clearly visible, her turrets frozen in place, trained toward the horizon, as though waiting for the next order to fire. Time had not erased her identity. The sea had preserved her, turning her into both tomb and monument. The images traveled around the world, reaching the homes of her surviving crew and their families. For many, it was a closure they had waited for their entire lives. The Helena had been found, and at last, she could rest. Today, the USS Helena lies silent in the deep, her decks covered in coral, her corridors filled with schools of fish. Nature has reclaimed her, but her story still echoes in every naval academy, in every museum, in every heart that honors courage. Because the Helena was never just steel and machinery. She was a living symbol, forged in the hands of Depression-era workers who needed hope, manned by boys who became men amid fire and chaos, commanded by officers who learned the price of modern war one shell at a time. She was the spirit of a nation made metal, democracy cast in armor plate, and though the sea keeps her now, her legacy endures in every sailor who ever swore an oath beneath the same flag she carried into battle. In the grand history of the U.S. Navy, few ships fought harder, died braver, or left a prouder legacy than USS Helena CL-50. She was, as her crew always knew, one hell of a fighting ship.